What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of NewOrleans.Basketball and NewOrleans.Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. What's popping with you, bro?
What up, bro? Everything's all good on this side. Kicking back and relaxing and enjoying all day basketball, man. It's been fantastic. You wake up early in the morning, and for me, you go to our office and you sit down, you do like an hour or two worth of work, and then you're like, oh wait, it's 11 o'clock. The NCAA tournament is about to tip off, and I mean, listen, for a hoop junkie like me, man, like I will go watch like fifth graders play basketball because I just love the game so much. So when you get into like these tournaments and you get into these games and you see some of these colleges and some of these teams of players that you like would never have seen before or never have watched, and then you watch them like ball out, like the guy from Oakland, right, who hit 10 threes. Like my favorite type of tournament game, I told you this off the pod, is I love when like there's a higher seed and a lower seed, like a severely higher, like a 3 seed and a 14 seed or whatever. And there's the lower seed has like one guy. And like his game is either 3-pointer or like he's like a really big guy or something like that. And the coaches go, you know what? We have zero chance unless you take every shot. And that was how the guy from Oakland was. I think his name was Jack Gockley or something like that. And he was balling with Big Pab. I just love that. I love seeing that. But just want to give a quick shout out. Shout out to Grambling's men's university, Grambling University, for going to the tournament. They drew the big man Zach Edey in Purdue, but just getting there, man, that's a big step, for Grambling and their fans and that contingency. Shout out to McNeese State, right? They had a fantastic season under Will Wade. Again, got to the tournament. I represented Louisiana well, but big shout out to the Lady Tigers of LSU.
It was dicey there for a second.
I was dicey today, man, against Middle Tennessee, man. They came in there ready to fight. They were physical. And then the second half started, and Flo J. Johnson was like, relax. I got this. Flo J was like, I got this. So shout out to them for winning their second round matchup. And definitely will be some of those seniors last night playing at the LSU, the women's facility, the home arena out there. So shout out to those ladies. They are absolutely kicking ass, and they are representing the state of Louisiana well. So I just wanted to give them a big shout out. But another team that's repping the city well and the state well is the Pelicans. So how's everything on your side, bro?
Everything is good. To your point, this is that time of year where you constantly got something to watch no matter what time of the day you're awake. You're absolutely right. I kind of like the Caitlin Clark going to the media and being like, yo, people are paying more attention to our tournament than theirs. Like, that's kind of fire.
She ain't lying.
But again, here's the craziest part with all of that, with all of the, the hype around this time of year and around college basketball. People are still really in tune to the NBA because every single game, like people are watching these games that like normally on a Saturday at 4 p.m. nobody is watching, but you're like, man, gotta have that game because that might shift that team up or shift that team. Like it's crazy.
God bless whoever. Yeah, God bless whoever came up that guy who came up with the play-in tournament because I was listening to a podcast and they was like, man, the Fighting Houston Rockets are coming back. They're a couple games out of 9th seed, and I'm like, man. There's a whole podcast section dedicated to the 10th place Rockets trying to catch the 8th, 9th seed because it's an important place to be right now. And so like, yeah, to your point, man, the play-in tournament has just completely revitalized the NBA and what it means to be in that regular season.
Yeah, it's wild, and the NBA has struck gold with that, and they're catching on to some things as, again, you see this next wave of superstars and all the players that come behind them, the Ants, the Wembies, everybody who's starting to show what they have. Now you get to the crush part of the season. But before we get too far into it, make sure you guys will follow us on Twitter, on X, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO_Basketball, no E. Make sure you are liking the episode below, and make sure, if you're not already, you are subscribed to the channel, NewOrleans.Basketball. So let's start off with the low point of the week. So this was a big matchup. Orlando was coming in as one of the hottest teams in the league they've been playing kind of some the sisters of the poor a little bit, but they've been winning. They've been winning convincingly from that standpoint. And you see the Pelicans kind of taking on the road to go challenge themselves. Because again, the Pelicans haven't really been playing the world beaters, so to speak, from that standpoint. So it's set up to be a very strong matchup. You saw the Pelicans come out and kind of assert themselves, and then you saw the Magic bounce back and kind of, again, turn the tide the other way in that particular game. And right when you thought, hey, the Pelicans are trying to position themselves to make a run and steal this one on the road, Brandon Ingram goes down. He gets injured in a way that, like, literally you walk away and the whole NBA is like, well, here we go again for the Pelicans. They may not get an opportunity to enter the season full strength. But since then, it's been less severe. Again, best case scenario, when you saw the announcement that it was a bone contusion and he might be back in 2 weeks, like literally that is not what I expected at all. Again, maybe we talked about it last fall. Maybe it's because we're conditioned to Louisiana sports that, like, we're used to everything being devastating. But the Pelicans had God on their side on this Palm Sunday because again, even though the Pelicans lost, I want you to talk about that. Even though the Pelicans lost and Zion didn't look himself and things like that, the biggest part, regardless of that, is like, man, does this re-change the season and what the Pelicans can potentially conquer as a team and things like that? But let's talk about the game now that, you know, the BI news has come and gone, and we'll talk about what the impact of that may be. But what did you see in this particular matchup? Because you and I talked about it. The Magic are very similarly built to, like, the Pelicans and a little bit like the Cavs. And, like, teams in the East, you got to remember, they got to see Giannis at least 2, 3, 4, whatever many times a year.
And Joel Embiid.
To this. Yeah, they're used to having to stack up and compete versus a dominant force that nobody has an answer for one-on-one. What did you take away from this game where it was just frustrating all around?
Yeah, this game reminded me a lot of that Cavs game. Like it just a lot of things that the Cavs did and a lot of breaks that happened the Cavs way. It went to Orlando, the Magic's way. So first things first, the Magic are the Pelicans East. Like they are very, very similar in a lot of ways, right? Roster construction, place in the in the conference, what they're playing for, kind of the style they play, who's their star players, how their star players play. Like it is very simple, very similar. There's a lot of similarities between the two. The one thing that stood out because it was one of those nights, the shooting variance. It happened against the Cavs and it happened against the Magic where the Magic just could not miss. They are run some of the lower ends of the NBA in the NBA as far as 3-point percentage, as far as 3-point attempts, as far as assists. Like a lot of those things they are not good at. They are good at getting the ball in the middle of the floor with Paolo and Franz, scoring in the paint. They have a lot of hard-nosed guards, like Herb Jones is for the Pelicans, what Jalen Suggs is for the Orlando Magic. Like there's just a lot of similarities and things like that. But that shooting variance is where you look at it and say, okay, this was this was a bound to fail for the Pelicans when you're only shooting 23s and the Magic are hitting every 3-pointer that they shoot. I mean, that is just not going to work that way. They built the wall in front of Zion, and I think Zion was trying to take it upon himself before Brandon Ingram got hurt, but especially after Brandon Ingram got hurt, to kind of try to style that run that Orlando kept making. And he just took it upon himself, and you could see him kind of forcing some of the things, forcing the issue, driving into the paint over and over again. And the Magic were just like, no, we don't care that Jose has been shooting well. We don't care that Najee has been shooting well. It's not gonna be you, right? And so I think it was a gumbo pot of all the wrong things going wrong, all the different bad ingredients for the Pelicans being put in there, and it was topped off obviously by Brandon Ingram getting injured. And I think seeing BI get hurt kind of like shocked the Pelicans. But I think what it looked like, right? Like we all kind of just was like, ooh, like this. And I think the severity of what it looked like, right, and especially not knowing until the next day was happening, it just kind of took the wind out the sails for the Pelicans that night. And they weren't hitting shots. It just was a bad mixture of things. But it's like we've been talking about all season. This is one of the healthiest seasons BI and Zion have seen. But shout out to Mortal and Doctor Strange. The bill comes due. And I think it's, again, like you said, it's a good thing that if the Pelicans are paying the basketball gods and the injury gods what they take from almost every team every year, if this is what we're going to see, and again, find me some wood, let me knock on it, let me hit on it with my hand, let me stump on it, let me do whatever, let me jig on it, all that on wood. If this is what the Pelicans are going to have to pay as far as the injury gods is concerned, then thank God that this is it, because that looked really, really bad for Brandon Ingram. But thank God that he's going to be all right. Obviously, the basketball side is what you're worried about, but the person and the human being behind those stats and behind those great plays and behind some of the things that he has done, you just don't want somebody to have to go through that, especially going into a contract extension, right? And so, good for Bi, good that he it's not a major injury, but that Magic game just was everything that a series of unfortunate events. Everything that could go wrong went wrong for the Pels.
No. I definitely understand that. I mean, from that perspective and from that type of game and that letdown of a game, I would say in terms of the results, I think it's hard to rebound and then bring that to Miami, right? Like when you think about everything that the last game had in tow and everything that this particular matchup meant for this particular Pelicans team, both Najee and Jose, you come off that Orlando loss limping like, hey man, there's no BI. What's the season look like? Blah, 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 blah. Into a game where you got to play up because you know Miami's going to play up for you. So talk to me about, again, taking that loss. And the Pelicans have done a really good job of responding off losses so far this season, which, again, if you look at these teams in the past, it's just not been the case until this particular season. So tell me what you saw in that Miami bounce back win that the Pelicans, to be honest, desperately needed to kind of stay in this chase before.
Yeah, the Miami game was like the complete opposite of that Orlando game where everything went wrong for the Pelicans. That was one of the more impressive team wins for the Pelicans, I think, of this season, just because of everything that you just said coming into that game, right? Like you're limping in, you get this horrible injury of BI. You see him barely being able to walk off the floor. You lose against a tough Orlando team, and all the stories that come out, right? Like we talked about when we woke up, like a week ago, and you look at all the podcast titles, and they all said Pelicans are rolling, red hot Pelicans. Can New Orleans be? And then you wake up the one day after that Magic game, and is the Pelican season over? Brandon Ingram is dying. It's like, so you get just this negative like energy as far as that goes. And like you said, you going into Miami where they have a lot of pride, but there's some bad blood there, right? The last time these two teams played, there was fisticuffs. WWE SmackDown broke out in the middle. Jose jumped on the table and it would look like he was about to like Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Jeff Hardy, Swanton Bomb, Thomas Bryant, who then hit him with the Big Show slap. It just was a lot going on in that first game at home in the Smoothie King Center. So coming into this game, it was like, okay, what can the Pelicans do different than that game? And then also, how can they dig themselves out of this, understandable like emotional toll that the Brandon Ingram injury put on them. Then they come in the game and CJ McCollum he turned into back at Portland. I mean, he went back to his Lehigh days. Shout out to the March Madness tournament. I mean, he was in his bag, and I think between CJ and the bench, mainly Jose and mainly Najee, they willed the Pelicans to a win. with Zion not Miami selling out to you, it's not going to be him. And Zion, and that's something we could get into later about, what Zion is going to have to start. I mean, obviously we saw it today, but what Zion is going to have to start doing with BI out. And I think, obviously, like I said, I think he's starting to change already. But CJ and the bench, I mean, the second line was second lining. And this is, again, there's going to be games in the playoffs where Najee's going to have to win you a quarter, right? Jose's going to have to win you a spurt. Trey Murphy is going to have to win you a game. Larry Nance is going to have to, get a game saving, run, stop, and block or rebound or something like that. The depth of this team, and it's starting to kind of show itself in a sense of there's a lot of like super duper role players on the Pelicans who can step into roles that it seems like a lot of other teams don't really have those guys. And you saw it in this team, in this Miami game. And when AD talked about it, when the story came out that, Willie is in there challenging Jose and Najee in particular, because, those were the guys who were suspended and in the fisticuffs and all of that. When he goes in there and challenges them, this is what we were talking about last episode about Willie Green being in tune with his team, right? Going to those guys who we all know are prideful guys, not just because of the personality they have, but their journey to where they are now. Prideful guys who he knows, let me go in there and kind of stoke the flame a little bit. And big, shout out to Najee and Jose for rising to the challenge in hostile waters against a team, a team that has a lot of history behind it and a lot of expectations placed upon themselves. And so going into that, I mean, that game was one of those games where you needed to have that win, not just for, like we talked about with the standings and where you needed to be. But after BI goes out and he's not out there, your fearless leader who everybody loves and follows behind, when he goes down and you go into Miami and go in there and win in convincing fashion towards the end of the game, it gives you that immediate sense of we can still compete, we can still do this, we can hold the fort down. You go in there and lose by 20, I don't think it knocks the Pelicans off track, but it feels different for the Pelicans if they go in there and lose by 20 and Miami just roughs them up and does things again. So to win that game is great. To win that game with Zion not being the best is even better. And to win that game with guys that you're going to need in the playoffs to step up in such a big moment was a really big thing for the Pels.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I look at is exactly what you mentioned. It's not necessarily that you won because Miami had kind of been flailing. They've been struggling as of
all
late.
season.
And you saw by the starting lineup from that standpoint, it's how you won. It's the fact that your two best players combined for 4 points because Zion had 4 points and Brandon Ingram didn't play. And you still won by 20 on a road versus a team you hadn't won in the last 7 tries. I think this was, and I tweeted about it, I think this was Willie Green's maybe his best coached game because everything that Spoelstra tried to do in terms of going zone, in terms of trying to take Zion away, which they did successfully, right? They frustrated him and it looked bad from his angle, but literally trying everything to do to get the most out of his team based off who was available. Willie Green had a counter for it all, right? Like there was times where, again, all season long, we've been talking about, the way to use JV and his effectiveness. A couple pods ago, we're like, well, if you're not going to use him, is this the end? Well, in this particular game, and you talked about it, there is going to be a game, you saw it again tonight. The Miami Heat just had no answer who was big enough. They brought in Thomas Bryant to stop Jonas. And whether he was scoring or not, you still have to respect it to the point where offense is made easier for everyone else. If you don't have a Brandon Ingram, if Zion is not going, CJ was going, thank God, but that was pretty much it. And so if you didn't use who all of last season we talked about was the second best gravitational pull outside of Brandon Ingram, all of a sudden you use him again in the matchups that favor him. That's something to figure out, which I want to talk about a little bit later. So again, it's a really good win for the Pelicans on a lot of fronts. I think this Detroit game was one that the Pelicans, again, you talked about the complacency and the ability to kind of fall into the trap games, and you don't really see it from this team. Like, they are getting out ahead of these bad teams early and taking away. The thing I look for the most in this particular game, the Pelicans win 114-101, is how is Zion going to respond? You just went against two top 10 defenses in the NBA who are used to and trying to build a team that can stop Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now you're going against a team that literally was like, yo, we're going to throw anybody out there one-on-one, James Wiseman out there one-on-one, and you'll get it or figure it out eventually, and it never figured out. You and I talked about it right before the game. Zion is playing at a different level, and even though we kind of hit a rough spot based off how the teams were defended, the first time you play one of those teams that's not good defensively, he's going to drop 40. Well, he didn't quite drop 40. He only had 36, 7, and 4 on 13 for 14 from the field and 11 for 14 for the free throw line. So not quite the 40 points, but this is the kind of response you want to see from your star player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that Zion is tapped in to the game right now in a way that we haven't seen in a while. And those two games against top 10 teams, like those were, especially the Miami one where you go in without Brandon Ingram. So like there is no, we are not even guessing what the game plan is. We know exactly what the game plan is as far as defending Zion. Those games are, you have to figure out and problem solve those games. But when you play a Pistons team where the Herb Jones assignment goes to Marcus Sasser, and shout out to Marcus Sasser, University of Houston, great hooper, boy can get buckets. You're not in a good scenario to play against the Pelicans this season for sure. When you're running out there, Herb, it gets to guard Marcus Sasser, because that's who the offense is going through, or whatever the case is. When you get into those games, you are incumbent to show why you are a dominant player in the league. You've seen Luka have 70-point games against this team, and Giannis have 50-point games against this team. And you go against these bad teams, these bad defensive teams. You go in there with bad intentions to make a point, and Zion did just that. He showed the entire repertoire and all the different aspects of the game that he has touched into. You saw him drive into the lane. And I think one of the things that I like to watch, and I tweet about it, Zion do, and I saw him do it a bunch of times this game, is when he is in motion and you are backpedaling, he figures out, like he measures up your feet. And when you plant your back foot to kind of, stand your ground, he is attacking that back foot. And once he gets that shoulder past you, bro, you might as well just run back on defense. And when he's into the scoring part, he's into rebounding, he's into the drop off pass to Larry after he scored twice in a row. They sold out to him, and he just, here you go, Larry.
Hold on. Before you go past that part, there was times in the games, the two games before versus Atlanta and Miami, that pass was there, and because people were bricking shots around him, he wasn't trying to make that pass. He was like, if we're gonna score, it's gonna be through me. But again, this is the first time you've seen Zion this far into the season, right? And so he's going to have to learn some things. That's something that I'm like, okay, the last two games, you haven't made the pass. Are you going to make it this time, even though you got it going? And he did. But continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You saw it. You saw the shift in trusting his teammates, and maybe that's something that was an emphasis going into the game. Because again, those last two games, he was forcing it, trying to score and trying to will his team, through some of these turmoils. And the way the Pelicans are set up, and Zion is going to understand it. He understands it right now, but it's going to become second nature for him. The way the Pelicans are set up, they are set up to if you have an injury or if you have a bad night, there are guys who can score. There is no problem with scoring on the Pelicans. So that's when Zion starts to understand that and trust his teammates, and is in that mode for a game. You get the games like now where there was nothing they could do. They They tried Chezi Metu. They tried the zone. They tried the double. They tried everything. And Zion, if he wasn't scoring, he was hitting guys open for the pass. And when the offense is humming like that, and everybody gets involved, and everybody's is feeling himself, this is one of those games where like you felt like everyone was involved. Like Trey missed a bunch of wide open shots and things like that. Right, he struggled. He missed an open shot, but like everybody, like JV had a spot. But this is one of those games where like it happened because of Zion, his 36, along with everybody else, feeling the ball and feeling involved. That is what makes this team lethal. And so it just was really, it was beautiful to watch Zion do what he does. Herb is, if we haven't said it, Herb is a defensive man and a maniac, should be first team all defense. CJ, again, getting back into form, into his shot, and starting to feel himself a little bit. But one last thing, I have to talk about the utilization of JV and why this is something we've been kind of talking about for a while on this podcast. If you follow this podcast, I don't know, and I tweeted out, I don't know if he's willing to accept it as a full-time role. But Jonas Valanciunas off the bench as a offensive hub against second-string centers and against second units is lethal. It is staring the Pelicans in the face. Again, he's going into a contract extension. I don't know if he wants to take that role full-time and then also have it reflect in his what could be his last bite at the apple as far as like a decent sized contract, because I mean he still served a good big man. I don't know if he wants to. If he does, then perfect. But man, watching him come off the bench, and again, the Pistons are the Pistons, and they were missing two centers in Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. Mm-hmm. But watching him just come in against like guys who don't belong on the floor with JV, which I call the Lithuanian basketball deity. It looked natural, and it looked easy for him. Like he was on the floor, he was taking advantage of the mismatch. He felt empowered to do so. He was taking advantage of the mismatch. And that one play where Zion hit JV in the corner for a three, and he like no look past it to Jose, who then hit CJ at the top of the corner, because they just don't know how to guard it. But it all started with JV's gravity. That is something that we have been talking about could do some damage. As a backup, JV could do some damage as a backup big on this team, right? If you go get that athletic big man, the rim protector, the shot blocker, and have JV as just the second string hub of the offense, I think it works well for JV, and I think it works well for the Pelicans. But again, another team that you did not belong on the floor with the Pelicans as their current iteration is, and the Pelicans went out there and proved that.
Yeah, I think it's, again, what this next 2-week period without Brandon Ingram, and hopefully Dyson Daniels makes his way back before then, it's going to teach you different ways to win. Because in the playoffs, people are going to stop what you do best, and they're going to try to stop what you do second best. But how many answers to the test do you have? How many times can you problem solve? How many times can someone throw a zone at you and you throw Zion in the middle? Okay, Zion's in foul trouble. So you put JV in the middle. Okay, JV's in foul trouble. Okay, or can't keep up with the pick and roll. Okay, you put Larry in the middle. You put Najee in the middle, and you know what to do, right? No matter what the situation is, no matter what personnel you have available, no matter what the struggle is, do you have an answer for it? And again, I think, and we talk about it, I think that JV, there are matchups in the West as it currently sits, where if JV has a sprint of 5 minutes, there's no one on that roster that's able to contain JV. And so I absolutely agree with you. So let's talk about it. Brandon Ingram's going to miss around 2 weeks. Hopefully he has enough time to kind of catch a rhythm with a couple games to go. He looks like he's been walking better. Again, this is best case scenarios for the Pelicans. But it raises a question, because everyone immediately says, okay, B.I.'s going to miss some games. Trey started most of the last season. Trey's a good starter. Trey's going to be the one that replaces B.I. or not replace B.I., but presents the same value in a different way than B.I. because of what he's able to, his ability to score looks like next to Zion. if that's necessarily true. I don't know if it's just a play Trae more, so Trae is the answer. Obviously, I think BI and Trae are in different tiers of player right now, and so it takes a little bit more to replace a BI's production. But here's my thing. Like, isn't that the whole benefit of this roster? So most people would look at the teams in the West and say, hey, 1 or 2, they're the better player, but 3 through whatever, the Pelicans have the better team. But just because you haven't seen a whole lot of Zion and a whole lot of BI in the playoffs. Well, if that's the case, whether you believe it or not, isn't the fact that you be able to lose a number 2 option and replace it with multiple guys? Because like you said earlier, it's going to be hard for you to see a game where CJ's off and Trey's off and Hawk's off and Najee's off. Like, and Jose's not making an impact and Her's off and Zion's off and JV. Like that, it's hard to watch a game and envision all of those things happening at the same time, much less for 4 games in a row. And so when you look at, whose production do you need to get it from out of this group of players that's left, where is your eyes gravitate to? Do you think it's more of a Trae and CJ bring us up, or do you think it's more distributed amongst the roster?
It's a great question. Great question. And I think, okay, so the BI injury is multi-layered. Okay, so on one side, Brandon Ingram's offense and the way that he's played this season and the offensive output that he has given the Pelicans this season, speaking strictly of scoring, I think you can mitigate that with more shots from Trae. Herb getting back to taking shots, right? Like there was a little spurt where Herb wasn't taking his threes for a while. He needs to get back to letting them fly, getting a couple of threes up, so obviously CJ getting back in the form, JV getting more involved. You can mitigate the offensive output for this stretch to kind of soften that blow for BI. What I don't think is being mentioned a lot is that lowest of the key, Brandon Ingram has become that athletic, big, not rim protector, but shot deterrented person for the Pelicans a little bit. He has been playing some phenomenal at the rim defense, some great help defense. And he and Zion taking on that responsibility, that defensive responsibility, has kind of like given you like 40 to 50% of that athletic big that you wanted from a team, because we've seen Zion at the 5 and Brandon Ingram meeting people at the rim to block and things like that. You're going to miss that. You're going to miss the playmaking of Brandon Ingram, who has been absolutely phenomenal as far as passing this season and moving the ball and things like that. That more so is what I'm concerned about, who's going to come in. And I think, we've talked about it. I think Dyson's coming back is going to help with that kind of, defensive minded, tall, linky, another version of Herb, just like a different version of him. And so I think he can come in and kind of help with that a little bit. But as far as like everyone stepping up, I think what you said, I think this is more of, you don't just take one person and replace Brandon Ingram on this particular team. There is no one replacement. As much as we do the twin, where have you been, with Trae and Brandon Ingram, they are not the same player. They are not the same player. They do a lot of things that look similar, but Brandon Ingram is just he is just a different tier of player. So I don't think that there's a 1-for-1 replacement for Brandon Ingram. But Brandon Ingram's offense, you're going to have to get that from Trae and CJ and more Herb shots and JV being more involved. Brandon Ingram's defense, the ability to kind of help the defensive side of the ball and play at the rim, you're going to have to get that from Dyson returning, and Herb is going to have to be more locked in defensively, and you're going to have more defensive opportunities from Najee and Jose. Those guys, and Larry Nance, like those guys are just going to have to step up defensively to give some of that back to the Pelicans. His playmaking, you've seen it. Zion is going to have to start to make more. You're going to have to start to have the ball moving a little bit more. So it's going to be different aspects of BI's game, and I think you see BI's value when he's out, because he has just so many things that he can go into, especially this year in his growth cycle. You just have to replace all of the aspects of Brandon Ingram's game with different players. Plug and play the different players. This is when the depth of your team gets tested, especially going into this homestand against some of these better teams. This is where your depth gets tested. And it's going to have to be Zion's leadership, CJ's leadership, and the cast of characters that the Pelicans have to kind of replace some of those BI moments and replace some of the output that BI has been given.
Right. And I totally understand that. And so, like, that brings up another point, right? Like, we talked about what are some of the things, like, can you go to JV during a 5-minute stretch off the bench and play with him as your hold? That's something you can find out over these next couple weeks while BI is nursing himself back. Here's my answer to the next question, and here kind of is a question in itself. Normally, when a cat goes down, you have a player like Anthony Edwards, who's the best player in your team, just needs to bring his team up. He needs to find a way. Even though Minnesota is a deep team as well, they also have a lot of players within the rotation that contribute in different ways. But the reason why the Timberwolves haven't just drastically fallen off the map, even though they're already a good defensive team and losing Cat is losing a big part of their offense, is because Anthony Edwards has started to play out of his mind in order to keep them in that top 4 seed. Which brings the question to me. Can Zion take that next step? Like we're talking about what he's been able to string together these last couple games and this last couple month or whatnot, and talked about how it's starting to look like an all-NBA type player because he's impacting the game in multiple ways on both sides of the court and things like that. But there's another level. And to be honest with you, this is where the question mark comes with Zion in the playoff. Like, what is he in the playoff? Like, is it something we can contain, or is it something where you just throw your hands up because you have no idea? No one's seen it, so nobody knows. I think this next little strip is kind of a blessing in disguise in some ways, because he's gonna this murderer's role of homestand games. You're playing versus the best of the best, and you need them all to stay both in the 5 spot and potentially move to the 4 spot. It's going to take a Herculean effort from Zion Williamson that I'm not sure you've seen yet, because the team has been blowing everybody out by 20 points all the time. You've never seen him have to go shot for shot for shot with the Tatums and the SGA. And you haven't seen that, and that's what happens in the playoffs. So my question is, like, can he go to that next level to the point where, like, man, nobody wants to see that team because nobody has an idea how to game plan it, because when you try to do that, he does this. When you try to do this, he does that. And then everybody else, again, then that depth, you always say the tide that rises all boats. When that tide is up here, like, that's when you start talking about making some impressions, I should say, in the playoffs. What's something else that you're looking to see? Can the Pelicans find this out about themselves while they're down, their leader?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is going to be an opportunity for Zion to kind of solidify and stamp what we hope will be a nice playoff run for him as well as the team, because this is about as close as you're going to get to, like, playoff games when you have every other day playing, and every other day will be Tatum, will be SGA, will be Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, will be Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, you're not going against the Pistons and that. Like, you're going to have to problem solve how defenses are guarding you, because there's going to be games where you can't do the Zion has 16 points and everybody. There's going to be games where, like, SGA is going to have 40 and you're going to have to go catch him and will this team with your superstardom, or Tatum or Giannis. Like, you're going to have to do that. And it's not going to be easy because you're not going to have Brandon Ingram to kind of bail you out as far as, like, game plan goes, right? Like, you're obviously still going to have to game plan for Trey and CJ and those guys. But, like, you're not going to have to game plan. You just can't leave BI one-on-one. And so that gives Zion a little bit of, opportunity to do some things. Whereas, like, okay, he's not out there. We don't give a damn who shoots the ball as long as it ain't you. And so now you have to problem solve that on the fly against some of the most elite teams in the league. And listen, honestly, I don't expect the Pelicans to win every single game on this homestand. I do not. But you want to see Zion and the Pelicans go up against some of these teams and beat them, and if not beat them, compete against them. You've seen Anthony Edwards go up against the Nuggets with Jokic on a second night of a back-to-back, and it came down to Ant getting this close to a pull-up three to tie the game to win. That is to go into overtime. They lost that game. But that is a game where you can look across from them and say, you know what? Had we been healthy, had this not been a second night of a back-to-back, we could go toe-to-toe with you. You don't want to get into these games and the same old mantra that you hear, oh, when the Pelicans go up against a decent team, oh, look what happens. You don't want to keep hearing that over and over again. You want to exercise some of those demons, and the best time to do it is at home. Another thing that I think that the Pels can find right now, aside from JV, and we've talked about, I think it's a mute point now about Hawk and Matt Ryan. I don't think it's gonna happen. But what I would like, the Pelicans team is, and I've noticed this, like with a guy like Trey, the second line is a bunch of like superstar role players. And where do role players play well? They play well at home. I want to see Trey. I want to see JV. I want to see the others, even if it's just not the bench. I want to see Trey have a game. I want to see JV have a game. Like that OKC game, I want to see JV just feast. I want to see him feast on a team that sucks at rebounding and is very skinny and small. I want to see JV feast in that game. Go find the matchups that work for the Pelicans. They need to start practicing these matchup hunts, right? We've seen them do it a lot. We've seen them do it tonight. I mean, today versus it's weird that the Pelicans played at 2:00. It is so weird. It's 5:30 and we have 3 hours away from it's crazy. But find where the matchups, where the mismatches are, and go at them over and over and over again. Whether it's Trey playing on the backside because everybody's focused on Zion, whether it's JV kind of finding a spot where they can't guard him and feeding him over and over again. Because the same way that in the playoffs, these teams are going to look for CJ. They're going to look for Zion. They're going to look for JV. Like they're going to try to pick at the perceived worst parts of your defense. You have to be able to do the same thing to that team. And with Zion kind of being 1A and B as far as like on the scouting report, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for one-on-ones on the other side of the floor. It's going to be a lot of opportunity for ones-on-ones down low with JV and things like that. I want to see them find those areas that work, that are going to be there and exploit them, because those are the type of things you're going to have to take. You get into a playoff series with the Clippers and Zubac goes down with foul trouble or something like that. You need to be able to go straight to the paint over and over and over again and JV needs to know that is something that's going to happen for him. Trey needs to know that that's going to happen for him. So I think Zion will be Zion, but I want to see the mismatch hunting from the others, right? JV fight for position, seal, demand the ball. Trey get open for the shots, call for the ball, attack over and over again, and make other coaches have to adjust. The way we've seen the Pelicans go down to Larry Nance in the second half and this and that. You want to see the Pelicans exert their will onto other teams, onto good teams, the way that they have done against bad teams and the way that other teams have done against the Pelicans.
Right. That's exactly what we talked about after the Clippers game. This was your way of controlling the game. No matter who was on the other side, you dictated the game. Can you do it versus the likes of OKC on Tuesday? versus the likes of Milwaukee championship contenders on Thursday, versus the likes of Boston, and then Phoenix, and then, oh, you get a break? No, you don't. You play Orlando, and then you play Wemby. Like, that's your homestand. Congratulations. Welcome to the playoffs. Like, that's what you get, right? And so something that, I want to touch on a little bit. Today, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a little point Zion lineup where you had Trey and Hawk on the court. And I think that, again, there's going to be times for Jose, and when Dyson comes back, the way Najee's playing, I don't think Najee's minutes are going down. There's going to be times for Jose, and there's going to be time for Hawk. And I think what the game dictates and what the game mandates, Willie Green, Zion didn't have it going versus Miami. Zion didn't go back in the game in the fourth quarter. He played the hard hand. You've seen him start to make some of these tough decisions, and you want to see that kind of balance out and see what that's going to look like coming down the stretch. So on our way out of here, we got to detail this game. This is a huge game. The Pelicans are going up against the number 1 seed in the Western Conference right now in OKC. OKC is also top 10 in offense and defense. They're also one of the teams that, you and I talked about this, seem to have passed the Pelicans up in national narrative, in that they're the young team with 2 superstars and all the draft assets, and they're the team that under 25 you would take their future for the next. They've kind of fallen to that mold, right, with the MVP candidate. So here's your opportunity at home, where the Pelicans have played well and played well against this team, to really make an impact, right? Because I think at least over these next 4, I think you need at least 2. Tell me what you're looking at in this matchup. Tell me some of the things you're highlighting on the way out.
Yeah, OKC has been really, really good this season. Shea has been playing out of his mind. And we all know, as Herb is first team all defense, incredible, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Shea has been really good. Shea has just been really good. He's a foul baiter. So like he gets people in foul trouble. He lives at the line. So you're gonna have to be wary of all of those things. But they are not good rebounding, and they are small. They are a very small team, especially when Chet is not in the game. And so, I think this is an opportunity. Like we said before, Zion and JV need to be able to feast in the paint. They need to be able to dominate points in the paint, to dominate the offensive rebounds, to dominate the defensive rebounds, right? To dominate just everything in the paint should be greater than sign Pelicans. Like, it should be the Pelican sign. The Pelicans should lead in all of those. Another thing that I want to see in this game is Zion look Shea in the face and say, I get it. MVP talk, all of that. Not here. I'm going to outplay you in the Smoothie King Center. And like he said, in the crib, because again, you're going against superstars these next couple of games. You're not going against like well balanced. Like, it's not like, and no respect to no disrespect to this team, but it's not like the Sacramento Kings are coming in, right? Like, where you have Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, who are great players, but they're not Jason Tatum. They're not Giannis. They're not SGA. Like, they're not those players. They're not Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Like, they're not those players.
MVP caliber player, yeah.
Yeah, those players are coming into the Smoothie King Center, and they're coming back to back to back like parade floats. So you need to be able to go in and outplay these guys, and Zion needs to take it upon himself to, this is your opportunity to make the statements to the whole league, right? The best of the best, because the national media will be paying attention to what Giannis is doing, and what Jason Tatum is doing, and what SGA is doing, and what Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are doing. They're going to be paying attention to that. And if every night you're like, well, the Bucks were in New Orleans and Zion put up 40, and SGA was in New Orleans and Zion put on 30, and you keep getting these games, against these teams, like, that is how you start to make the statement and kind of plant your flag on this playoff run that's coming. So this OKC game is going to be great. I mean, there's going to be some good basketball being played. I'm really excited to see Zion versus SGA, but I'm also really excited to see like Jalen Williams and CJ and just like the nuances of all of like their offense and the way that they structure their offense against the defense of the Pelicans. Will the Pelicans go zone and dare SGA to take some of those threes? Like just a lot of like basketball chess moves to be made in that game. Mark Daigneault is a great coach. Willie Green has made tremendous growth this season. It's just going to be really good to see these two young teams kind of go at it for Western Conference, not so much supremacy, but like Western Conference control of the narrative. Because if you go in here, dominate us, SGA and OKC, then that goes a lot. That goes a lot for when this playoff series, when these playoffs start, and you start to advance, and now these games start to come back. Remember when Zion put up 40 without BI against SGA and beat them by 2? Like, those are the games that you want to have under your belt. So I can't wait. I'll be in the building. I can't wait to watch that game. And it should be some really good basketball for basketball junkies to consume.
Yeah, you bring up a good point in how the Pelicans, they're number 2 behind Miami in the league and the amount of zone they run. You talk about teams like the Pistons and other teams you've seen like start the game in the zone out of almost like out of desperation. The Pelicans are using as a weapon because they have so much length that they can flow from side to side and make you play a certain way. And the other thing that I noticed about today's game, Zion played the whole first. He played the whole third, and I don't think he's done that maybe in his Pelicans career. And so just like you talked about it, you're going to need that next level Zion. That means he's got to be on the court. And he was interviewed with Jen today. What do you like about this new playing time that you're playing? He's like, as long as I'm on the court, I like it. It might take 38 minutes. It might take 40 minutes. It might take 42 minutes, but you are not leaving the court until your team wins. That's when you know you got a superstar that has arrived. So with that being said, we got a hell of a week in front of us. What you got left?
Yeah, as always, you never know what people are going through. So give someone a smile today. Yeah, the week is this hell week. This is rush week. This is hell week. This is you want to be a playoff team. You want to make some noise in the playoffs. You want to be respected as a playoff team. Here you go. Here's your slate, and it's all at home. So the role players should be all in. The Smoothie King Center is going to be rocking because everybody is getting into playoff mode. And we remember, we talk about this off the pod. We remember how the Smoothie King Center was during that playoff run against the Suns, in that series, and how alive it was. And I think the way the team is constructed, and now the way they have to play, now that BI is out, is going to be a symbiotic relationship between the Smoothie King Center, the fans, and the team. The team is going to play well. Smoothie King Center is going to be electric, and they're just going to feed off of each other. And I think that is going to be very key in this homestand. But here it is. The chance, the opportunity to stake your claim and get ready for this playoff run is right ahead of you. And I can't wait to see what goes on when the ball gets thrown in the air. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Shout out to all the people that came through the live show, man, and all the love that y'all are showing in the comments. Appreciate y'all. Welcome to everybody who found the channel. As you can follow us at NewOrleans.Basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. And then NewOrleans.Basketball. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time.